Mr. President, are you deploying the additional troops to the region for deterrence or to optimize your operational capabilities? But we have a lot of troops, we have unlimited ammunition, we have the greatest equipment in the world, and we are decimating Iran. It's about time. With the order to bring 20,000 troops to combat readiness, military units across the country began assembling their personnel. Transport trucks pulled up to barracks and staging areas. Soldiers loaded their rucksacks packed with changes of clothing, hygiene kits, first aid supplies, rations, and personal essentials onto the trucks and climbed aboard. They had been told they were heading to the Middle East for an undetermined period of time. At the same time, airborne units were going through their own process. Paratroopers had already rigged up main parachutes on their backs, reserve chutes on their chests. They carried their weapons in soft rifle cases in their hands, slung over their shoulders alongside their combat packs. They formed two columns and marched toward the C-17 Globemaster III aircraft, waiting on the taxiways with their ramps down. The paratroopers would fly to the operational area, jump, and be on the ground before the bulk of the conventional forces even arrived by air transport. On a separate airfield, ground crews were loading ordnance into a B-52H Stratofortress. This bomber had its own mission deep inside Iran. The weapons being loaded were massive. 2,000 LLB Mark 84 General Urpost bombs, each one nearly 13 ft long and over a foot and a half in diameter. Forklifts and bomb loaders brought the munitions to the aircraft one at a time. Each bomb was hoisted into the internal rotary launcher inside the bomb bay or mounted on the external wing pylons. The ground crew guided each weapon into position, locked the mounting hooks, connected the arming wires, and secured everything in place. In the crew room, the B-52 pilots and crew checked their equipment. They tested their oxygen masks, verified the regulators, and adjusted the fit. The flight to the target would be long, hours in the cockpit at high altitude, and the oxygen system had to function perfectly for the entire duration. The crew packed their personal bags with essentials for the mission: water, snacks, maps, checklists, spare gloves, and anything else needed for a flight that could last over 12 hours. When the call came that the aircraft was ready, the crew walked out to the B-52 and began loading their gear aboard. There were several bags, personal equipment, flight publications, mission planning materials, survival kits. Everything was stowed in the crew compartments. The pilots climbed to the upper deck and settled into their ejection seats. The B-52 started its engines, all 8 turbofans winding up one after another. The aircraft taxied to the runway, lined up, and rolled. The heavy bomber accelerated slowly, used nearly the full length of the runway, and lifted off, climbing gradually into the sky under the weight of its full bomb load. Below the pilots in the lower compartment, the electronic warfare officer and navigator took up their positions. These two crew members would manage the radar, navigation systems, sensor suite, electronic countermeasures, and weapon systems throughout the flight. On an aircraft carrier at sea, Marines prepared for their own departure. Their helicopter, a Sikorsky CH-53E Super Stallion, was already parked on the flight deck with its rotors folded. The Marines were heading to link up with units establishing a forward camp near the Iranian border. They grabbed their gear, climbed the ladderways to the flight deck, and walked to the helicopter. The rotors unfolded and the engine started. The Marines boarded through the aft ramp, took their seats, and the CH-53 helicopter took off from the deck and headed inland. At Allied airfields across the region, Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters were also in the air, fing additional personnel to forward positions. The Black Hawks flew in pairs and groups, moving soldiers from staging bases to their assigned units closer to the border. The flights were short and constant: land, drop off troops, fly back, pick up more, repeat. When the C-17 carrying the paratroopers reached the drop zone, the crew sent the signal to the troop compartment altitude. The jump masters gave the commands. The paratroopers stood, hooked up, checked their static lines, and began jumping out of the aircraft one by one. Parachutes deployed in a long trail behind the plane. Within minutes, the entire stick was on the ground, collecting their chutes and moving to the rally point. After dropping the paratroopers, the C-7 continued to an Allied airfield where it landed and taxied to the cargo ramp area. The rear ramp lowered and vehicles belonging to the unit's support element were driven off. All units converged on their designated positions. The paratroopers who jumped linked up with the vehicles and supplies that arrived by air. The Marines flown in by CH-53 reached their assigned sector. The soldiers transported by Black Hawk were at their posts. The heavy equipment and vehicles were arriving on follow-on flights. Everyone began the process of establishing their positions, digging in, setting up communications, distributing ammunition, and building the camp that would serve as their base of operations. Their armor and heavy vehicles were already en route and would arrive shortly. The force was fully assembled, fully equipped, and ready for combat operations. Nice in there. They're about to do a gun run. You need to get down. Let's go, buddy. Come on, man.